Martin Popoff here. Welcome back to another episode of Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. It's our short show that we do here on the Contrarians, where we look at an old period review of an album that became much more famous than it was at the time, and see if the writer of the review back in the 70s or whatever. I think we've done the odd 80s one. I think we did Black Sabbath Mob Rules so far. Got the story right. And today we are going to look at AEROSMITH Rocks in a Rolling Stone review written by John Millward. We've met John before. I can't remember what episode it was, but he's written another review that we've reviewed here. AEROSMITH Rocks comes out in 1976, and here is the concurrent the period review of it. Let's see what he says, and let's see what we think of it. Whether or not Rocks is hot depends on your vantage point. By the way, I just look at these cold now, so I have no idea what he's going to say here. If your hard rock tastes were honed in the 60s, as this band's obviously were, AEROSMITH is a polished echo of Yardbirds guitar rock, liberally spiced with the Stones' sexual swagger. So again, what you get happening here with these old reviews is there's not much to compare things to. These are decent comparisons, but the Yardbirds get way too much credit for whatever they did. I always go back to that stuff, and I always consider it very overrated. Too much importance placed on it. But yes, we know AEROSMITH is somewhat derived of the Yardbirds a little bit, and then the main connection is Train Kept a Rollin', and then we definitely know that they've got a Stonesiness to them in their music here and there, and obviously Steven Tyler looks like a young wild version of Mick Jagger and all that kind of stuff. So I guess these comparisons are warranted, but really they're fairly off the mark when it comes to music. You'd think you'd get a little more comparison to other hard rock. And by the way, it's got a dash in hard rock, which is kind of weird. Okay. If you're a teen in the 70s, they are likely to be the flashiest hard rock band you've ever seen. While the band has achieved phenomenal commercial success, their fourth album fails to prove that they can grow and innovate as their models did. Interesting, because number one, recognizing that they're a big band, I like this about they are likely to be the flashiest hard rock band you've ever seen, because that's kind of true of AEROSMITH at this time. Kiss is flashier, but not so much the English bands, who are going away at this point. Sabbath is waning. Deep Purple is breaking up. Uriah Heep is waning. But they're flashier than Ted Nugent. Arguably as flashy, or maybe a little flashier than Blue Oyster Cult. But that's kind of cool. And then he kind of gets this wrong, right? Failed to prove that they can grow and innovate as their models did. Well, let's put it this way. I think they're definitely growing. They're not innovating a huge amount over Get Your Wings and Toys in the Attic. But, fact of the matter is pretty much everybody thinks this is AEROSMITH's best record. Let's see what else he says. The most winning aspect of Rocks is that ace metal producer Jack Douglas and the band, listed as co-producers for the first time, have returned to their ear-boxing sound that made their second album, Get Your Wings, their best. The guitar riffs and Steven Tyler's cat-like voice fairly jumps out of the speakers. This initially hides the fact that the best performances here, Lickin' a Promise, Sick as a Dog, and Rats in a Cellar, are essentially remakes of the highlights of the relatively flat Toys in the Attic. The songs have all the band's trademarks, and while they can be accused of neither profundity nor originality, AEROSMITH's stylized hard rock image and sound pack a high-energy punch most other heavy metal bands lack. He didn't put a dash in heavy metal this time. You see that in other Rolling Stone reviews. I like that he calls Toys in the Attic flat, because I've always thought that Rocks is just a less flat, a flashier, more dynamic version of Toys in the Attic. He even says that in the songs. He's matching up the songs back to back. I kind of like that, because I think Toys in the Attic is a flatter version of Rocks. Steven Tyler is the band's obvious focal point, a distinction earned primarily by his adaptation of the sexual stance of Jagger for a generation that missed the young Jack Flash. So that's true. I've always said this, everybody says this, but AEROSMITH is like the second coming of the Rolling Stones, a new improved version of the Rolling Stones. I totally believe that. On the rockers, his delivery is polished and commanding and sufficiently enthusiastic to disguise the general innocuousness of the lyrics. On the riff-dominated songs, though, such as Last Child or Back in the Saddle, he is prone to shrink. He is prone to shrieks. Those two are not the most riff-oriented songs on this. I don't know why he says that. That don't bear repetition. Unlike Jagger, his vocal performance cannot save otherwise mediocre material. I think Stevens' vocal performance is superlative, amazing, better than Mick Jagger on any Stones album. And I think this is not mediocre material. This is an absolute classic of an album. Everybody loves Rocks. The material is Rock's major flaw. Mostly pale remakes of their earlier hits, notably Dream On, a first album ballad that helped make the complete Aerosmith catalog gold. I think that's kind of like a dumb comment because there's nothing on this album at all that sounds like Dream On in any way, shape, or form. Not even Home Tonight for that for that matter. Aerosmith may have their hard rock wings, but they won't truly fly until their inventiveness catches up to their fast maturing professionalism. That is funny because this is considered their greatest album, and B, they fly even higher with this album, commercially speaking and critically speaking, over the next little while. And I like this. It ends with catches up to their fast maturing professionalism. Well, we know the professionalism is going downhill after this, right? Draw the line, and just the antics and the drugs, the hard drugs, the live shows, everything, the breaking up, of the band somewhat. Night in the Ruts, I think it's a great album, but yeah, their professionalism is on a huge downward slide after this. So fast maturing professionalism, that is prophetic. Anyways, there you go. That was another episode of Reliving Old Reviews is a useless tool of confusion.